Okay, so the first thing that I am planning on getting rid of, that was not proper English. Hello everyone, my name is Chelsea and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I have an unhaul. So this is actually the biggest unhaul I have ever done on my channel. I try to unhaul books like 2 times a year, and this time I ended up like purging books. That's what it sort of felt like. We are actually changing some stuff up in my house right now. We are actually preparing for my parents and my younger sister to move in with us, and so because of that, we're moving rooms around. And I actually had my TBR books in a separate room than the library here, but I know I had a lot of things that I was like, if I really had to consider, am I going to get to this, or do I really need it on my shelves? I knew I needed to purge some books. So I started picking things off the shelves, and I actually posted a question on Instagram like as I first started doing this, being like, hey, does anybody think I can actually get rid of 100 books? And these were the results. Most of you felt like I could get rid of 100 books. I don't know how many of the people that voted realized that like the books that I currently own are over 1,000, like very, very close to, if not 1,500 books. So it wasn't even like I was necessarily planning on getting rid of even 10% of the books that I own. But I am happy to say I was able to reach 100. I actually was able to reach 200. I am getting rid of exactly 200 books today. And so yeah, most of these actually I think are books that I decided I don't necessarily need on my shelves. I'm pretty sure 3/4, maybe 2/3 are books that I have read before, whereas only 1/4 to 1/3 of books are books that I have not read. They're on my TBR, but I really just don't think I'm going to get to. And so ultimately, it's not horrible because I do keep books on my shelves that are like favorites. And like that's the kind of thing that I want to see, is I want to be able to see my favorite books and be able to see this like library, this huge library that I have here in my living room, and like see my favorite things and books that I want to read, or books that I loved, or books that I think I'm going to reread. And so ultimately when I do unhauls, I unhaul anything that is 3 stars or lower, sometimes 3.5. But because I was doing a bigger purge this time, some of the books that I'm getting rid of were actually 4 or 5 stars. They just weren't like things that I necessarily think I'm going to read again, or not absolute favorites. So yeah, 200 books is what I'm getting rid of today. I do have this broken down into categories, and I will leave timestamps down below in case you're just interested in like specifics of things. But I'm going to be just going through them in the best categories I was able to sort them in. I also do sell most all of my books on Depop, so I will leave the link down there for that as well, because the day this video comes out will probably be the exact same day that I'm posting these on Depop. I usually try to get them done around the same time. So yeah, I think that's a long enough introduction, and this is probably going to be slightly long as a video because of the fact that I am getting rid of 200 books. But we are going to jump on into it, and the first category of things that I'm getting rid of are manga. Okay, the first thing I'm planning on getting rid of is the Kurosagi Corpse Delivery Service. This is by Eiji Otsuka and Nosui Yamazaki. So this is Omnibus volumes 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I believe there are 3 volumes of the manga in each of these. This is going to be I believe, a seinen series. Definitely more on the darker and adult side, and I did really enjoy these when I was reading them. It's all about these like students at a Buddhist university who can sort of like see ghosts and stuff, and they try and help them. This is almost the entire series, but there was never an Omnibus Volume 5. You just had to like get more volumes afterwards, and I think after the 4th volume came out, we had to wait a little bit for more in the series, so I never finished past Volume 4. But like I said, I did really enjoy it. I think I gave pretty much all these 4 stars, but I just don't think I'm ever going to reread them. It's been so long, I'm never going to continue with the series either, and so yeah. The next one I have here are the first 3 volumes of Persona 4 by Suji Sogabe and Atlas. So we have 1, 2, and 3. I absolutely loved the game Persona 4, which is part of the reason I started collecting these, but I never read them. I've had them for years, so many years, and I feel like this is supposed to follow the game exactly, so because I've already played the game and I know everything that happens with that, I don't really feel compelled to read these. These are volumes that I have considered unhauling before, and so even though I haven't tried to even read them, I don't think I need to keep them. The next series I have here is Behind the Scenes by Bisco Hattori. This is the entire series, volume 1 through 7. This is the same author. These are gonna be very glary, aren't they? This is the same author as Ouran High School Host Club, which I absolutely loved. This one though, I think I gave almost every single volume 4 stars. It is very much focused on like arts and crafts. It's a club in college, and I just don't think I'm ever going to reread them. It's not one of my favorite series that this author has done, but it was really good, and so I do think that this will find a new home that will absolutely love them. Next, and I'm sure this is going to pain a lot of people, I have the entire Death Note Black editions by Tsugumi Oba. I read up through volume 4, potentially. I don't think I ever finished the last 2. This is another series that I've had for forever. Like, I've owned this longer than I've known my husband, and I keep trying with this series, both in manga form and anime form, and I keep DNFing it. I keep saying I'm not going to, but I do. And I DNF it at the same part every single time. Like, I have tried so many times with this series. After they make certain character decisions around volume, I think on this one it's like halfway through volume 4, I lose focus and I just don't care anymore. And I'm sure if you guys have either watched the anime or read the series, you know what I'm talking about. And I just am at that point where, yes, these editions are so cool, because they have the black edges and everything. Like, they look so nice. I just don't think it's something that I need to have on my shelves, because I've never actually finished the series. I wish I liked it more, especially in the later books. But yeah, I think it's time to finally officially give up on this series. Then I have volume 1 of The Drifting Classroom by Kazuo Umez. This is an omnibus edition as well. It's a very nice hardcover edition. I think this is a series that is quite old, and so it does have some problematic elements in it. Things that I just really did not enjoy. Some things are a little misogynist. Some things are just not that great. I mean, it is a horror series, and it has like students in a school who like end up on this like different planet or something. I don't fully remember, but it is very horrific. But because of those elements, and because it is such an old series, the art style also is not necessarily my favorite, and I don't think I'm going to continue with this, but it is a classic horror manga. And then the last manga I have here are the first 9 volumes of Tokyo Ghoul. This is by Sui Ishida. I only have read up through volume 8. So I have never read volume 9, and this is just one of those ones where I don't think I'm going to continue with it, because part of the reason I never read volume 9 is that I read 1 through 8 when those ones had come out, and I had to wait for volume 9 to come out. I eventually did purchase it, but it had been so long since I had read them that I wasn't entirely too sure, you know, like what I remembered, what I didn't, and I just never continued. And now Tokyo Ghoul is over, and they have like Tokyo Ghoul Re or something, so we're on a completely different series now, and I just don't think this is one that I'm ever going to reread and continue with. Like, I've sort of grown out of it. I don't know if it's actually even grown out of it. My interest is not there anymore. Okay, moving into the next category, I have some comics and graphic novels. Okay, so the first bunch of things I have here are all Buffy the Vampire Slayer related. So I did keep all of my Buffy comics that are technically canon, as in they follow the show, and I have kept the ones that are the reboot ones from Boom Comics because I definitely want to continue with those. I started reading them and I have just not finished or kept up with it quite yet, but I do have some here that are technically more not canon related. They are just extra ones that are not part of the actual like world. They're extras, and I don't think I'm ever actually going to reread them. So yeah, I have the Spike Omnibus. These are a whole bunch of Spike comics. The art style, like, I absolutely love Spike as a character. The art style on a lot of these, though, are not my thing, and so when I looked through it, ultimately, I was like, you know what? I don't think I'm ever going to reread it, even though I love the character so much. And then I have the first 5 Buffy the Vampire Slayer omnibus volumes as well. I think there's like 6, though, so I never even finished my collection of these. But again, these are going to be stories that are comics, obviously, but set during the show, but none of them are actually canon. And so again, they were things that I liked reading when I read them, but I don't think I'm ever going to read them again like I have with the things that are technically the continuation comics. Like, I have read those a few times. And then I also have 3 volumes of Buffy the High School Years. We have Freaks and Geeks by Faith Erin Hicks. We have Glutton for Punishment and Parental Parasite. These are both by Kel McDonald. Again, these are ones that are not canon. Also with this series, the High School Years, it has a very like anime feel that I did not like as an art style for Buffy stuff specifically. So those are the first comics that are leaving. The next set that I have here are actually the first 3 volumes, I think these are the only ones that are out so far, of The Umbrella Academy. I absolutely love The Umbrella Academy on Netflix, and I wanted to read the like source material, so I read the first 2 when the first season came out of the show, and then I also picked up Hotel Oblivion. I did like the fact that, again, I got to read these and see some of the backstory, and some of the storylines that are from the later volumes actually do come into play in the show. So this is volume 3. Dallas, which is volume 2, and Apocalypse Suite, which is volume 1. I did like seeing the storylines get put into the show. They're not exactly in the same order and stuff that they were in these, but I liked seeing it. However, this series is so weird and convoluted, even more than the TV show is, that I did have a hard time following some of the storylines. And yeah, I actually ended up giving all 3 of these volumes like 3 stars because they were good-ish, but not the best. And technically I should have gotten rid of them earlier because of the fact that I try not to keep anything on my shelves that I rate under a 3.5. And I did for all 3 of these volumes. And then the last volumes I have here are all going to be indie published type of comics that I just don't think I'm going to read again, even though some of these I did have a good time doing, but I don't think that they have any like sequels coming out, even though some of them I do feel like need to be having a longer storyline. So I have Humbug. This is by A.J. Gentile. This I do believe is like sort of a Scrooge type of thing. It is. It's about Ebenezer Scrooge, like from A Christmas Carol, but he is a paranormal investigator. I actually did like this one, and it is a whole graphic novel instead of a comic, and the art style is actually pretty interesting, but I don't see myself rereading this again. I could be mistaken. I'm having second thoughts potentially on this one just because the art style is so cool, but I never pick it up. Then we have Neverland Volume 1 by Stephanie Salyers. This one is based on Peter Pan. I believe it is not fantasy-ish. I could be mistaken because Captain Hook has like a very crazy bionic arm here instead of a hook. But it is very, very short, and this is one of those ones where I felt like it definitely needed like a volume 2 in the series, and I have not heard a single thing about it. But this is, I believe, yeah, Neverland is a dark and magical reimagining of Peter Pan set in the present-day landscape of Hollywood, and it does get sort of dark, but again, it needed to have a longer storyline, and I just don't think they're gonna do that again. They might. We'll see. And then we have Stained by David Barron. This one is a very, very dark and gritty sort of story. I think I still gave it like 4 stars, but it is, again, not one that I'm going to reread. This has to do with like, I don't know, kidnapping or something. Very, very dark and gritty. And then I have Nomad. This is by somebody with the last name Kafori, Andrew Kafori. I have not read these. I've had them for a few years now and they're just on my shelves. This one is The City of Empty Towers and this is part 1 of The Cave of Broken Tombs. I get a lot of my indie published comics and stuff at Comic-Cons, and this was a Comic-Con that I went to that had very little actual like artists and stuff there with comics or anything like that. It was very weird and sort of small, and so I definitely got this one because that's part of the reason I go, not just to see, you know, celebrities and stuff, but to pick up indie and self-published comics and stuff, and I just don't think I'm actually interested in it. Okay, moving into the next few categories. These are going to be all things that I have read before, but I'm deciding to get rid of. And the first section is middle grade. The first one I have here is Bridge to Terabithia by Katherine Patterson. I feel like this is a classic that most people know about, and this is definitely one that is contemporary. It is not fantasy. I have seen people question it. It has like kids using their imaginations, but not actually fantasy. And this one's actually going to go to my younger sister. She wants to read it. So yeah, it's just something I don't think I'm going to personally reread. The next one I have here is Island of the Blue Dolphins by Scott Odell. This is another one my sister wants to give a try. And this is a classic. I'm just going to basically say it's a classic. It's a Newbery Award winner. Yeah, medal winner. And I actually remember reading this in school, in elementary school, and so I think this is actually my copy from around that time, so I've had it for so long, but I'm not going to pick it up again. Another book from around that time period is Stepping on the Cracks by Mary Downing Hahn. I think this is the only Mary Downing Hahn I have read, even though she does like middle grade horror. Like I know that they're still publishing some stuff by her. This is not. This is historical fiction. I'm pretty sure it's historical even for when this was published. I'm assuming. When was this? Are you going to tell me? Yeah, it came out in 1981, but it's based on like one of the world wars. Like one of the girls' brother is off at war and they're becoming friends, something like that. But yeah, I'm never going to reread this again. Then I have The Egypt Game by Zilpha Keatley Snyder. This is one that I remember reading in elementary school, and when I worked at a school, I wanted to share some stories with the Title I students that I was working with, and this is one that my 4th graders that year picked out, and so this was my new copy so that I could share it with them. And yeah, this is a contemporary story about kids playing a game that they have dubbed the Egypt Game, and then there's some sort of like little mystery going on with this as well. I did really like this. I have not read anything else by this author, and I just don't think I'm currently at the point where I potentially would, but this I did remember liking. Then I have Ella Enchanted by Gail Carson Levine. I absolutely love the movie. I did not necessarily like this book. I think according to my Goodreads, I gave it like under 3 stars. I might have given it like a 2, but this was years and years and years ago, so I actually don't remember what I didn't necessarily like about it. This is another Newbery book. It's a Newbery Honor book. It's something I might pick up eventually, but I hate this cover as well. It's had better covers, so yeah. Another book from my elementary school years is Fever 1793 by Laurie Halse Anderson. Very famous author. I don't remember much about the story because, again, this is going to be a historical fiction about yellow fever. I believe it's about a girl, probably, and her family trying to survive in the time of yellow fever. I don't think I'm going to reread it. And the last one I have here is Penelope by Marilyn Kay. This actually is a book adapted from the Penelope movie, which again I absolutely love, but this book I didn't like as much, and again the cover is like a movie tie-in cover. I know, probably because it was written after the movie. I'm just never going to reread this either. Okay, the next section is YA. First one I have here is Trying to Live with the Dead by B.L. Brunimer. This is a book that I actually have duplicate copies of. This is the first edition of it, and all the other books in the series that I own and that are coming out are not this size. Like, this is a shorter in height one than the other books in the series, but I don't need a first edition copy. This is a book that is like paranormal. It's about a girl who can see ghosts, and she moves to a new school and starts to become friends with some of the people there. This does eventually turn into like reverse harem, polyamorous sort of stuff, but not in the first couple books of the series. But yeah, I don't need a duplicate copy. The next one I have here is The Coldest Girl in Cold Town by Holly Black. This is a vampire story. I think I gave it like 4 stars. I just don't think I'm going to reread it, and I'm a little bit hesitant on some of Holly Black's stuff. Like, I have more stuff in some of these piles later that I just don't think I'm ever going to get to, and I like this well enough for what it was, but I don't think I'm going to reread it. Next, I have Lady Midnight and Lord of Shadows by Cassandra Clare. This is the first and second book in the Dark Artifices series. These are the paperbacks. I actually have the hardcovers, and I actually do still have the paperbacks of like the Mortal Instruments and the Infernal Devices in this sort of like one where they have a scene on the spines, but those ones, the hardcover and the paperbacks, have different covers on the front. These ones don't. They're the same as the hardcovers. I don't really need the paperbacks, even though it has a cool spine design, because I would rather have the hardcovers, and I never ended up getting book 3 for this, so these are duplicates. Then I have Fangirl by Rainbow Roll. This is a contemporary YA story that I just don't think I'm ever going to read. I've only ever actually read Fangirl and Carry On by this author. I did like Carry On, so far I'm keeping that one, but I have no interest in other things this author writes, really, and I'm never going to read this again. Then I have The Walled City by Ryan Groudon. This one I did like when I first got it. I believe this is a sort of like fantasy sort of setting. It does have some Asian inspired influences in it, but I don't remember much else about it, and it's one of those ones that I don't think I'm going to pick up again. And then I have Hello, I Love You by Katie M. Stout, YA contemporary romance. Again, I think I gave it like 4 stars when I first read it, but I'm not going to end up reading it again. Next, I have the entire 2 series, technically, of The Iron Fae by Julie Kagawa. These are the old covers. So I actually have the first 3 books in this series, The Iron King, The Iron Daughter, and The Iron Queen, in the new covers that they had been coming out with, because there's a new series for this one, and so I want the new covers. So these are the old ones. The first series has The Iron King, The Iron Daughter, The Iron Queen, and a sort of spin-off one, The Iron Knight. This is a different point of view, but it is in the same series. And then we have the second series, which is The Lost Prince, The Iron Traitor, and The Iron Warrior. They are actually doing covers, I believe, for these ones as well. So I just am at the point where I do want these on my shelves. I absolutely love them, 5 out of 5 stars. I probably will reread them in the future, but I don't need duplicates, and I've already started collecting the new covers because I absolutely love them, so yeah. Then I have The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. This one was just sort of okay for me. I do understand why people absolutely love this. It is a very important book. I actually read it this year, and so I'm getting rid of it now just because I needed some room on my shelves, but I don't see myself ever rereading it. And I think another thing that just bugs me a little bit, even though I know this book came out a while ago, it does have quite a few Harry Potter references, and so that annoyed me as well reading it. So I'm just at the point where I don't think I'm ever going to reread it again, and I don't need it on my shelves. Next, I have Ophelia by Lisa Klein. This is sort of a retelling of Hamlet from Ophelia's perspective. It is obviously sort of a historical fiction because it's based on Shakespeare, that kind of thing. Again, I really liked it when I read it, but those aren't really my genres anymore. Then I have I Believe in a Thing Called Love by Maureen Gu. This is a very cute YA romance, but I don't see myself picking this up again. Next, I have Lost in the Neverwoods by Aiden Thomas. I actually read this year. Did not fully enjoy it. It just dragged on a little bit too long for me. I think I gave it 3 stars, and so as of my rules, this really does need to go. I absolutely love Cemetery Boys though, and I'm very excited for the new book, The Sunbearer Trials, that's coming out. But yeah, I'm never going to want to keep this and reread this, so yeah. Speaking of Rainbow Roll, I have Carry On. This is the paperback version. I have the hardcover, and actually I ended up getting this new cover as a dust jacket. There was like a pre-order thing, I think, when Wayward Son came out, so I don't need the paperback just for the pretty cover because I now have it as a dust jacket. Then I have Reverie by Ryan LaSala. This one I did enjoy. I think I gave it like 4 stars. It is a very queer fantasy type of story, but I'm not reaching for YA as much anymore, so yeah. Then I have Remember Me by Chelsea Bobulski. This is a book I read last year as part of my series of like reading books by authors with the same name as me, and I did like this one as well. It's a paranormal romance sort of thing. It has some historical aspects to it. I just don't think I'm going to reread it again. most of this YA is because I'm growing out of YA a little bit, and I don't think I'm going to reread as many of them as I used to think I would. I also have Starflight by Melissa Landers. I actually got rid of book 2 in this series last year sometime because this one I liked, book 2 I hated. It was completely different, new characters, new point of view stuff, and I'm just at the point where I'm not going to read more in this series if there was ever going to be more. I don't even know if there was a book 3 or not, but I didn't like book 2, and because of that, I don't need this one either. Next, I have 2 books here by Goldie Moldavsky. I have Kill the Boy Band and No Good Deed. I think I gave both of these 4 stars when I read them. This one is sort of thriller-ish. This one's just more contemporary. Again, I think I gave them both 4 stars. Not going to reread them again. Although this one does have a really cool, like, naked hardcover as well. Very, very bright green. And then I have The Sacred Lies of Minnow Bly by Stephanie Oakes. This is a cult story that I did like when I read it, but I'm not going to reread it. I also have One of the Good Ones by Maika Mulit and Maritza Mulit. This one I did like. It was very slow to start off with, and then it had a twist in it because this is going to be more of a like contemporary thriller related to racism. It definitely has multiple different points of view from different time periods in this family, so it's all going to be related to these girls here. These are sisters, but after that twist, which I did really enjoy, I know what the twist is and I don't think I need to reread it. Then I have Will Grayson by John Green and David Levithan. I got rid of all of my John Green books a couple years ago just because I knew I wasn't going to reread them, and I kept this one, but I think it's the same thing. I have not thought of it since I got rid of the other ones. And then finally, for the young adult stuff, I have 2 Stephanie Meyer books. The first is the Twilight Anniversary Edition that has Life and Death, and then also Midnight Sun. I am keeping my original 4 books of Twilight stuff because they're the ones that I've had, bless you, because they're the ones I've had since high school. They have some nostalgia for me, even though I know they're not the best and they have some problematic elements. But yeah, I was on the hype train for Life and Death, and it was okay. And then I got Midnight Sun because I thought I had to, because I remember when that book got leaked forever ago, and we never got to complete it. This is too big of a book for what it was. Lots of it was just very boring, and I don't think I'm going to be continuing with the like Edward perspective stuff. Okay, now we're moving into the adult stuff that I have read. So first I have the Reluctant Royals series by Alyssa Cole. We have book 1, A Princess in Theory, book 2, A Duke by Default, which was my favorite book of the series, and book 3, A Prince on Paper. The thing is about these though, I only ever really gave them 3.5 stars. So even though book 2 was my favorite, I don't even think it got a full 4 stars, and I don't think because of that I'm going to read them again. I did like the experience, but they're not my favorites. Next I have The Wedding Crasher by Mia Sosa. This is a book that I got blind. Like, it was a book that I did not pick out for myself. I actually read this as an ARC earlier this year, gave it 3 stars. Not my favorite romance, just from the romantic build-up aspect. It wasn't what I was wanting from it, and so I did end up receiving it in like a box sort of thing, but I knew as soon as I got it in I was going to get rid of it because I did not enjoy my time reading it as much as I wanted to. Then I have The Time Machine and The Invisible Man by H.G. Wells. This is a compilation of both books in one that I've had since high school, and I actually did like both of these when I read them, but this version is definitely not something that I like because it has like weird notations at the bottom telling you what certain things mean, and I don't think I need the help with that. But also I'm trying to get rid of some of the classics that I've had since high school that I don't think I'm going to reread for a lot of them. This one I might, but I would want a different edition. Same thing with this, Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. I've had this since high school, actually read it in high school, and I just don't think I necessarily want to reread it. Like, I liked it for what it was. It's very classic sci-fi sort of stuff, but yeah. Another classic I read in high school is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest by Ken Kesey. This one we actually had to like annotate, but the way we had to annotate it was weird. We had to highlight and then write the like thing that we highlighted in a notebook and then why we highlighted it for the annotation. So I have no idea what any of these highlights mean. Again, a classic. I did like reading when I read it, but I don't think I want to reread it. Another one that I read in high school is Kurt Vonnegut's The Sirens of Titan. This one I picked for myself, so it wasn't a class read or anything like that. Yeah, classic sci-fi sort of stuff, but I'm not going to reread it. This is one that I gave 5 stars, The Secret History of the Pink Carnation by Lauren Willig. It is very much historical fiction, and I just don't think it's something that I'm going to want to reread again. I thought I might. I talked about it in a video within the last couple months or so, but the more that I actually think about it, it's just taking up room on my shelf, so yeah. And then I also have this one, Strange Stories from a Chinese Studio. I have not actually read this, but I also don't think it's on my actual TBR stuff because we got this as like a used book sort of thing because it sounded cool. They're like translations of stories that were originally written in Chinese, but I think my husband even said that some of the stories in here he doesn't recognize, and I just don't think it's something that we're ever actually going to pick up. Then I have the 3 books from the Wicked series by Gregory Maguire. So the first book is Wicked, the second book is Son of a Witch, and the third book is A Lion Among Men. I think there is a 4th book in the series that I never had interest in reading. I actually technically have a different edition of these ones. It's like the Barnes & Noble Classic leather bound-ish type of ones over here. So these 2 I'm getting rid of because I technically have a duplicate, and I remember not actually really liking A Lion Among Men, so yeah, that's why I didn't want the 4th book. I'm just going to get rid of those ones. I'm also going to get rid of The Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis, mostly because it's in this huge omnibus edition, and I do remember liking this. I read this forever ago. I think my last time I reread it was college, potentially, but I don't like how big this is because it is huge. I would rather have a collection of the smaller individual books that look like a series than an omnibus. Then I'm getting rid of Armada by Ernest Cline. This is the same author as Ready Player One, which I absolutely loved. It's actually like on my favorites shelf over here. I think it's like right there. This one was okay. I gave it 4 stars because I did like it more than I thought. And it has like a cool edition. Like, it looks really nice. This was just the standard hardback edition. It's about a boy who ends up, I think, using video games, like a console sort of thing, as almost like drone pilot sort of stuff because there's like an alien invasion, something like that. I don't fully remember. It's been years, but I did not like it as much as Ready Player One, and I think this is a standalone, so we're gonna get rid of it. And then I have 2 more books by Stephenie Meyer. The first one here is The Chemist. This was her attempt at a contemporary thriller, mystery sort of thing. The first 100 pages were so boring, and then once we got past those 100 pages, it really picked up and I did like the rest of it from there. But because of how bored I was the first time I read this in the first 100 pages, I just don't think I'm ever going to pick it up again, although the payoff by the end I do think was pretty good. And then I also have The Host by Stephenie Meyer. This is actually a duplicate copy because I do have one here on my favorite shelf. You can't really actually see it from the angle you're at, but this is the adult sci-fi one that she wrote that I actually really enjoy. One of my favorites. I've reread it probably almost 10 times, so yeah, I just don't need 2 of them though. Okay, moving into another category, we have nonfiction. So basically the only nonfiction I really end up reading is autobiographies. I don't even like plain biographies, but I never reread them. I have just been sort of collecting them, and I don't need to, so I think this is all the nonfiction I have on my shelves. I will have no nonfiction left when I get rid of these. But the first one I have is Without You by Anthony Rapp. This is an autobiography of him, but also about Rent and the start of that play. Then I have Yes Please by Amy Poehler. This is her autobiography. The reason I still have them is because I gave them 4 or 5 stars. Like, I really did like these. I also have Nerd Do Well by Simon Pegg. Again, his autobiography. Choose Your Own Autobiography by Neil Patrick Harris. This is set up as a choose your own adventure story, but because it is an autobiography, it is a little hard to read it that way. I did really love this, but I eventually stopped reading it as a choose your own adventure and just read it front to back. I Am Spock by Leonard Nimoy. This is one that I read like 10 years ago. 11 years ago. I really did enjoy it. Spock was one of my favorite characters on Star Trek, and I really did like Leonard Nimoy as an actor and director, and we got more of his life. And then two that I have not read, because I just haven't, is Star Trek Memories by William Shatner. This is an autobiography, but he also has a co-author, and I've read some of his fiction work. They're okay, but again, I feel like he has people that really, really help him with it, and I just never got to the point where I wanted to re-pick up more Star Trek autobiographies. And then I also have Leonard, My 50-Year Friendship with a Remarkable Man by William Shatner, and again with a co-author. This one is a biography by William Shatner about Leonard, but it also feels like, I did not read it, but it also feels like it's probably more about William Shatner's feelings about the person, and I just, again, I'm not gonna read it. Another category I have here that I didn't quite know where else to put it, so it's a very sort of random category, is Star Trek. We just talked about some Star Trek stuff. So I have Vulcan. This is a hidden universe travel guide. So it's supposed to be like a travel guide to Vulcan. A friend gave this to me when they were moving out of the country because they knew I like Star Trek stuff. I don't think I like it enough to actually read this. I liked having it on my shelves, but I needed some room, so yeah. And then we have the Star Trek Academy series. So we have the Delta Anomaly. I read this last year, gave it 2 stars, really hated it. It did not feel like a Star Trek book. And then we have Book 2, The Edge, Book 3, The Gemini Agent, and Book 4, The Assassination Game. I have decided not to continue with the series because of the fact that I hated the first one so much, and I don't think they're all by the same author. I could be mistaken. I don't know. I like this alternate universe Star Trek stuff, but I don't think I'm going to read these at all because I did not like the first book. Okay, now we're getting into things that I did not read. We're getting into like TBR books. Actually, the first 2 books I have here, technically a separate category. These are books that I DNF'd this year that I am not going to read, and we're just gonna have their own category. So we have Hook's Tale by John Leonard Peelmeyer. I have a vlog where I was reading Peter Pan types of books, like retellings, that kind of thing. I got almost halfway through maybe on this one, did not like its portrayal of women and like teenage characters and stuff, and so I was just like, no. Then I also have An Illusion of Thieves by Kate Glass. This is an adult fantasy that I just started trying to read and did not really enjoy my time with it because it is going to be a very, very high political fantasy, and that is not my thing, so I did not get very far before I decided I just needed to stop. Okay, getting into TBR things, we have another category that's not just strictly TBR. These are series that I started and have decided not to continue with. So the first one I have here is the Lux series by Jennifer L. Armentrout. So these are the omnibus editions that are actually quite shiny. Can we even see, like, they're like glittery almost, like holographic. This is Beginnings. It includes both Obsidian and Onyx. This is Consequences, which includes Opal and Origin. And then we had this one that I think was the new one that came out when they did the omnibus edition. So this is like the original cover of this one, which is called Opposition. I did not read this one ever, and I did read these 4, because technically it's 2 books in each volume. I liked it for what it was. It is a YA sci-fi sort of thing, but it's been so long since I should have read Opposition that I would have to reread all of the other ones, and I just don't feel like doing that, so I'm not going to be reading Opposition. Then we have The Dragon Warrior and The Fallen Hero by Katie Zhao. I gave the first book 3 stars when I read it. I did think I was going to read book 2 because I had already ordered it and had it come in, but I just don't think I care enough about what happened at the end of The Dragon Warrior to continue. This is one that my sister wants to read though, and she's the perfect middle grade age group for this, so I'm gonna pass it along, but I'm not going to continue with The Fallen Hero. Then I have The Chase by Elle Kennedy. This is the first book in the Briar U series, which is a spin-off of the Off-Campus series. I liked this one well enough. It is definitely new adult romance, but I just don't think I'm going to continue with the other books in the series. I also have A Deal with the Elf King by Elise Kova. This is a new adult romance with fae, but they do have other books in the series that have, I think, vampires, and there's one other one that's not an elf, I don't believe. This is an indie series, and so it's absolutely gorgeous each time, but I didn't feel the romance in this one as much as I was hoping for, so I just don't think I'm going to continue with this series, although I do have other things that I've read by her that I really, really enjoy. Then I have The Declaration by Gemma Malley. This is something I read back around high school or so, and there is technically more in the series, but I would have to reread this to read more because I don't remember anything about this really except that I liked it, and I think it's YA dystopian. But yeah, I'm not going to continue. Similar thing with this, I read this one forever ago. It's Incarceron by Catherine Fisher. There is at least book 2 in this series, but I read it so long ago that I don't remember anything about it. I believe this one is YA fantasy, although it could also be dystopian, but I think it's more fantasy. Then I have Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children by Ransom Riggs, as well as book 2, Hollow City. I read book 1 forever ago when this like first came out in paperback, because it is a paperback. I did enjoy it. I have never read the rest, and I know there's even more that have come out as like spin-off ones or a second series. I don't know. I actually posted some of these books as polls on my Instagram asking people, do you think it's worth it for me to keep this book or to continue with the series and that kind of thing? And you guys were a good help with most of them. Some of them I did the opposite of what you guys said, just because it got to the point where I was like, you know what, I posted this as a question, but I really feel a different way. But a lot of people said it's not worth to keep reading this series. So I'm going to pass this on actually to my sister because she wants to read the first book at least. Then I have the Hush Hush series by Becca Fitzpatrick. I have book 1, Hush Hush, book 2, Crescendo. These are the ones that I have read previously. And then I also have book 3, Silence, and book 4, Finale. These are the 2 I have not, but I picked these up quite a while after I read the first 2 books, and I would have to reread the first 2 to finish. I've considered it, but these are like early 2000s YA paranormal romance dealing with like fallen angels, and I just don't think that's my thing. I also have these Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. This is one that I read mostly as an audiobook, and it is so slow that I don't know if I want to continue with the second one. If I do, I might do audiobook again because I feel like that's one of the only reasons I continued with this. It is a Shakespeare retelling, like a retelling of Romeo and Juliet with some fantasy elements, and it is set in like 1920s Shanghai, so it is also historical fiction, and all of that put together sounds interesting, also sounds like not 100% my thing, and it was just trying to be too atmospheric for me. The ending was really good, but I think I only gave this like 3.5 stars total, and so I don't think this is something I'm going to continue with. Then I have a duology. This is Arclight and Meridian by Hossein L. McQueen. I read Arclight who knows how many years ago. I think I actually gave it 5 stars. I really enjoyed it, but Meridian I've had for so long. I would again need to reread this to read this one, and based on the poll you guys answered for me on Instagram, you said not worth it, and I guess I agree, so we're getting rid of it. Then I have 2 series here that I feel like people are gonna hate me for, but it is what it is. I'm getting rid of A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. So I read the first book a few years ago. I did enjoy it. I have not read book 2 or book 3, and based on the character changes, like book 1 is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and there is some romance, and I don't understand how we're getting from book 1 to book 2, and I feel like people that liked the guy in book 1 don't like book 2 and book 3 as much, and then vice versa. If you really liked book 2 and book 3, book 1 wasn't your favorite. I just don't think these are necessarily my thing, so we're getting rid of it. And we're also getting rid of Throne of Glass. I read Throne of Glass and Crown of Midnight. I liked these well enough. I don't think I gave them 5 stars. I could be mistaken, but I was collecting these in paperback. I also picked up The Assassin's Blade, which is a collection of short stories that I have not read, and then I picked up Heir of Fire. Heir of Fire I picked up pretty soon after it became a paperback, but when I read Throne of Glass and Crown of Midnight, there was no paperback of Heir of Fire, so I had to wait a while between these 2 and picking up this one, And so it got to the point where I was like, if I'm going to read this, I want to reread it. And then I haven't. And then more books came out, and then the series is completed, and we have all this other kind of stuff going on, and I've just gotten to the point where I don't think I'm ever going to reread it. And so that's just how I feel about it. Okay, next I have some special editions. Some of these I've read, some of them I have not. The first one I have here is the Gilded Ones by Naima Forna. This is one that I asked about on Instagram. It was very, very mixed, and I just got to the point where I think I'm not going to read it. I also have This Woven Kingdom by Tahira Mafi. This one people actually did say I should at least try a chapter of, but I have a friend who I do trust their opinion on books that said this is one of the worst books they have ever read, ever, and I should just pass it. And the fact that I don't know what this is about, I don't know what age group it's for, I did not like a different Tahira Mafi that I've tried, I think I'm going to trust them and just get rid of it. Although it is gorgeous. I also have We All Fall Down by Rose Sabo. I actually got this very, very recently in an Illuma crate within the last couple months, but I did not like What Big Teeth by Rose Sabo. Like, I absolutely hated it, like really, really low 2 stars. And I've heard some mixed things about this, but also heard some really not so great things about some of the trans point of view characters and how people treat them and things, and I just don't think this is one for me. Then I have The Nishan Smile by CJ Merwild. This is a duplicate copy because this was a Fairy Loot edition, I could be mistaken, Fake Crate edition that originally had come damaged here, and pages in the front were sticking together a bit, and so it was one of those things where they actually offered to send me a replacement because it was damaged, and so I don't need 2 copies, especially since the one that I have now is much, much better quality. They just had some issues with some of the printings on this one, and then it did get damaged in transit. Next, I have The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Suri. Again, Illuma Crate edition. I am not the biggest fan of like really heavy political epic fantasy, and that's what I feel like with this one. It's also very, very thick, and I've heard this is slow to start, and I just don't think I'm actually going to read it. So, same thing here with The Unbroken by C.L. Clark. Another one that feels like a very, very heavy political epic fantasy, and I've been going back and forth on these two especially for a while now because I think they came out last year, and I don't think I'm going to get to it. I also have The Ivory Key by Akshaya Rahman. This one I believe was a second book in an Illuma Crate. I love the blue edges and everything, but I was never really interested in this in the first place, and I just don't think it's something that I'm interested in at all anymore, so yeah. Then I also have Grim Lovelies by Megan Shepherd. This was from a Shelf Love Crate, which is a company that went out of business like in 2020, and I was interested in this because it is something to do with like familiars and magic and being turned into animals and things, but I just have not reached for it ever, and so I think we're just not gonna read it. I also have Lore by Alexandra Bracken. I do like some Alexandra Bracken that I've read, but I've heard really, really mixed things, leaning in toward bad things about this, on how slow it is and the character development and stuff like that. And also, just in general, I don't like the black background of this version versus the original cover. So yeah. I also have Goddess in the Machine by Laura Beth Johnson. This is a YA sci-fi, and I absolutely love sci-fi. However, I have heard from some people that I trust that have read this that it does have a sort of interesting speaking style with some of the characters in here. Like, it is very much something that is spelled out phonetically, and I personally have a hard time reading things like that, and that just sort of turned me off the whole concept of this book. So yeah. Then I have the Afterlight editions, like the Illuma Crate editions of Spoiler Alert and All the Feels by Olivia Dade. I do not like these covers nearly as much as the Lenny Kaufman covers that we get as the paperbacks in the US. But also, Spoiler Alert was a 5-star read for me. All the Feels was like a 3, maybe a 3.5. I liked some of the characters, but not others. It just did not feel like it came together as well for me. And I had ordered this as the Afterlight box, whatever, before I read All the Feels. And so by the time I had finished that, I was like, I know I now have special editions of it, but I don't know if I want to keep it. And I think because of the fact that I'm also just not the biggest fan of these covers, we are going to get rid of them. I also have the Illumicrate editions of Chain of Gold and Chain of Iron by Cassandra Clare. These are the special edition Last Hours books. They are coming out with the third book in this series as well, but I don't have anything else on my shelves that match these, like for the rest of the Shadowhunters world, and they're just big chunky books. Like, they are gorgeous, but I don't need them. I really don't need them. And then the last one I have here is the Barnes & Noble classic edition, so like the leather-bound type of ones, of The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. This is one that I picked up forever ago thinking I might read it. It is the first book in a very, very long series. Again, epic fantasy, probably political fantasy stuff as well. It's gorgeous. It's such a cool, like, edition, but I realistically think my tastes don't align with it and I'm not going to read it. Now, officially, we are on just things that I pulled off of my TBR. We are going to start with young adults. I'm actually not going to get into any explanations for these because the whole explanation for everything else that I have here is just, I don't want to read it anymore. Probably have had it for way too long and it's just, I'm not interested anymore. We have Of Metal and Wishes and Of Dreams and Rust by Sarah Fine, Falls the Shadow by Stephanie Gaither, A Weapon of Magical Destruction by Katie Salidas, Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Nyong, Holding Up the Universe by Jennifer Niven, Never Contended Things by Sarah Porter, The Shadow Queen, and The Wish Granter by C.J. Redwine, Scythe and Thunderhead by Neil Shusterman, The Modern Fairy Tales, and The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, American Panda by Gloria Chow, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins, Take the Fall by Emily Hainsworth, When the Moon Was Ours by Anna Maria Mclemore, The Other Normals by Ned Vizzini, and The Way You Make Me Feel by Maureen Gu. And then finally, we're into the adult TBR. King of Battle and Blood by Scarlett St. Clair, The Summoning by J.P. Smith, She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. This is actually a duplicate, I had two. By Force Alone by Levi Tahar, 99% Mine by Sally Thorne, The Witches of Echo Park by Amber Benson, Alias Hook by Lisa Jensen, A Tale of Red Riding Hood, Fate of the Big Bad Wolf, and Rise of the Alpha Huntress by Neo Edmond, The Ultimate Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. I've read the first two books of this. I have not read books 3, 4, and 5, but I have a different edition that's like the Barnes & Noble Classics one, so we're getting rid of this. Ready Player 2 by Ernest Cline, Daddy's Little Girl, and Let Me Call You Sweetheart by Mary Higgins Clark, Unshapely Things and Unquiet Dreams by Mark Del Franco, Breakout, Deadly Pursuit, and Death Defying by Nina Croft, Unclean Spirits by M.L.N. Hanover, Spellsinger and Kozel by Alan Dean Foster, Dead to Me by Anton Strout, Clean by Alex Hughes, Night Shift by Lilith St. Crow, Wormhole by Jake Hasselberg, and Lightning by Dean Koontz. And that is going to be everything. A little bit warm in here. Need to put my hair up, but that is everything. All 200 books that I'm getting rid of off of my shelves. As you can see, I think I mentioned this in the last video, we've also changed where I'm filming. I really, really like it. I've also rearranged all of my books since I've taken things off of my TBR, and I just really, really like the way the shelves are. I'm planning on doing a bookshelf tour probably at the beginning of next year, just because I feel like that's when I usually do it, and so we'll see. But yeah, I needed to just purge some books off these shelves, and let me tell you, putting the books back, I guess, back onto the shelves, but like in new positions, like rearranging everything without all of the books that I had taken off, I love it so much. Like, it just looks so good. It's a weight off my shoulders. And so yeah, I hope you guys liked this video. Again, I will leave the links down below for like the Depop and stuff in case you are interested, although it's only shipping in the United States. But yeah, that is everything that I'm getting rid of for now. I think I'll have another unhaul next year sometime. And that's going to be it. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up to let me know. Subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see more videos. I do currently have videos up on Thursdays, so I will see you then. Bye!